Okay, we are live. Told you we were going to try to be more on time tonight, and here we are, but we got to let it breathe just for a moment. We got to make sure that there's an opportunity for everybody to join us. And we are good. Welcome in, everybody. It is the Mile High Huddle podcast. I'm your host, Chad Jensen, and with me, my fellow football priest. He is the deputy editor, senior editor. What is the new title, Zach?
Senior.
Senior editor of milehighhuddle.com. You know him, you love him, Zack Kelberman. Zach, bro, we'll get into the main topic for tonight, but just since we're just coming off the heels of the final gun, what were your thoughts and takeaways from Buffalo, Pittsburgh?
Not surprised Buffalo won. Tough environment for the Steelers to be in with Mason Rudolph, but like any other Tomlin coach game, I give the Steelers credit for battling back. It was on the verge of being a blowout, and they made it competitive in the fourth quarter. Buffalo looks pretty good, Chad, but certainly not unstoppable. Next week, though, Chiefs, Bills, version 4 or 5 now should be plenty entertaining.
Yes, indeed. And that does kind of now kick the door open for Pittsburgh to start looking ahead to their off season. And we talked last night about just the possibility of, say, a Mason Rudolph, who one former NFL GM says is an ideal Sean Payton quarterback, to hit free agency. There was, who was it? David Carr, listed his, what was it, 5 or 6 top Russ landing spots. You wrote it up for us. One of them, though, Steelers. Break that down.
Yeah, David Carr, formerly the number 1 overall pick many years ago, he ranked 6 potential destinations for Russell Wilson in order, and Atlanta was on the list, Tennessee was on the list, Chicago was on the list, but number 1 was Pittsburgh. And basically the argument was that he believes Mike Tomlin won't stand pat with Kenny Pickett and Mason Rudolph going into next season atop the depth chart. And he posits that the vertical Mike Sullivan offense, I'm pretty sure that's the coordinator there in Pittsburgh now, it'd be an ideal blend with Russell Wilson's abilities as a passer. And he said even in a competition, it would make some sense to pick up Russ and give the Steelers an upgraded quarterback.
Dude, every time I think of David Carr, I just think about all those sacks and what could have been for the burgeoning career of David Carr, as you mentioned, the former number 1 pick, to the expansion team, Houston Texans. I mean, dude, this guy, if he hadn't been on his back so much, 76 sacks, Zach, as a rookie, 68 sacks his 4th year. But I digress. Russ to Pittsburgh wouldn't shock me. But first things first, the Broncos claim the door's still open to Russ. What do you suppose the prerequisites are, Zach, for that to even be a true possibility, Russ coming back?
They would have to redo his deal to make it more team friendly toward the salary cap. So I don't know if it's still, striking the injury guarantees that are going to become fully guaranteed on the 5th day of the new league year in March, or reducing his annual salary, or cutting his cap chart, something to make it where they can still build a team around Russ while still paying him to be the QB1 temporarily anyway.
Yeah. And the problem is, and here's why we keep saying that there's this much daylight in that barely cracked open door, is Russ doesn't have a whole heck of a lot of incentive to tweak his contract. And maybe he would, Zach, if Bronk, what's up, bro? So good to see you. Michael Ronquillo in the house. Much love to one of the pivotal foundational members of our community. But maybe Zach, Russ would have more incentive, or maybe his approach or mindset to it would be different had the Broncos not kind of done him the way they did him during the season. Like, for example, let's just assume for the sake of argument that everything Russ has said about his perception of the phone calls from George Paton is true. If George Paton would have still made that phone call at the bye and said, hey, what do you guys think about maybe, restructuring these injury guarantees? And they said, no. Okay, cool. Zero intimation of a threat, zero intimation of an ultimatum. Then he doesn't get benched for 2 absolutely meaningless games relative to Jarrett Stidham. Then you hit this offseason. Maybe he's a little bit more amenable because he doesn't feel like the Broncos have A, done him dirty, and B, put him through some, I almost cursed, crap. And basically already have 1 foot of Russell Wilson out the door.
It's interesting. I think you're right. There was an article, some insider, whatever, said that Russell Wilson won't do the Broncos any favors, and nor should he. There's two situations where I can see him being open to restructure. You kind of laid one out if they didn't approach him the way they did. The other scenario is if he would have had a bad season under Sean Payton, and he didn't really have a bad season by the numbers under Sean Payton. 15 games, 26 touchdowns, only 8 picks, 3,000 yards. So if he had a crappy season and the Broncos approached him, I can see him maybe being open to it, but he looked pretty good and under Sean in the first year. And like you said, if I was him, I wouldn't help out a team that did me dirty either.
It's all relative, really, right? When we talk about Russell Wilson's body of work under Sean Payton, if you just compare it, not just the box scores, but what you saw from Russ with your own eyes to 2022, year one with the Broncos, it was obviously, I would go as far, and I'm not trying to be hyperbolic here, Zach. I would say it was leaps and bounds better. All right.
Yeah.
But it's still relative. It's still relative to what he did in 2022, which was utterly horrific most of the season. He improved the touchdowns. I mean, he's thrown the most touchdowns this season of any Broncos quarterback since Peyton Manning in 2014, not 15, Peyton Manning 2014. Made some baller plays in the clutch, some big time highlight reel type of stuff that went on throughout the season. But what was the breaking point, or where was the rub, let's say, for Sean Payton, Zach? I think it was simply all those years and years of being conditioned working with Drew Brees. Sean Payton got used to the idea, and even the guys that would step in that Payton had success with when Brees needed relief, he was injured, whatever. The Sean Payton could always count on those quarterbacks, for the most part, to be where they're supposed to be, and generally, as far as the pocket and timing, and generally be on schedule. That's the one area for Russell Wilson that, going back to what we talked about last night with Pete Carroll, he's not that type of a pocket passer. He's an athlete passer, to quote Pete Carroll.
Yeah, from a macro level, I think you're spot on, and on a micro level, the decision from Sean Payton and the shift in power, I think, came in that Houston game, Chad, because it was after the winning streak, and the Broncos were right in the thick of the playoff picture. If they would have won that game, they would have given themselves like an 80% chance to make the postseason. How did they lose that game? On a Russell Wilson pick. It's just not the way Sean Payton wants to go out. It's not the way that Sean Payton wants his quarterbacks to represent him on the field. And that's why a few weeks later, that Detroit sideline blow up happened. All speculation on my part, but I wouldn't be surprised.
Also, we talk about, Zach, his lower, or his very solid touchdown to interception ratio, 26-8. It's very healthy. Only 8 interceptions. You go, all right, that's pretty dang good. Yes. However, Zach, he did have a lot of fumbles, a lot. Pulling it up from 2023 on his fumbles. Let me find it. Where is it? On PFR. I want to say 10, but I want to make sure. Well, I'll find it when I'm not on the spot here, and I'll come back to you on it. But too many fumbles. And it's, in fact, most of the daggers. What's up? The Duchess in the house. We got Michaela Parker. What is going on? Most of the daggers, Zach, weren't the picks. I mean, not to say that there weren't a couple, killers there, but most of it were those fumbles that tended to be kind of game swingers or momentum swingers.
The fumbles and also the sacks. And the sacks weren't all on Russell Wilson, Chad, but again, was it the Patriots game or one of the games? It was literally wide open field in front of him. There were crossing receivers. I mean, he could have made 3 or 4 different reads, and he strafed and sidestepped right into pressure. I think over the course of 15 games, it really wore Sean Payton down, and he said, enough's enough.
All right, so fumbles real quick. I just got to get this. I got to get this out. Where is it? Here we go. 2023, pardon me, 10 total fumbles, Zach, 10. 2 recovered, two recovered. That's it. So 80% of those fumbles, Zach, I mean, it just didn't bounce the Broncos' way when it would come out. And so many of them were him running around off schedule, and someone comes up behind, pops the ball up, right? The pass rusher who's gone all the way around the whole corral. He's about to do a full circle, and there's Russ. He's in pursuit, gets behind him. Whoo, ball comes out. Dagger. Dagger. Guys, lots to get to, including your super chats. First, though, we got to remind you that, hey, it's a NFL football playoff game actually tonight still. Got to get your Little Caesars on. Make Little Caesars a part of that experience for you because they are, of course, the official pizza sponsor of the NFL. You order online during the Pizza pregame. You can do it up 1 hour before and 3 hours after NFL kickoffs. This game, Bucks Eagles just kicked. You've got still plenty of time. And get ready for some football and fun. You choose your favorite Little Caesars pizza or pick the toppings you crave. And either way, you win.
The Broncos didn't do a lot of winning this year, Chad, but when you have Little Caesars, you're always a winner. And speaking of winning, everyone scores with convenient delivery or our in-store pizza portal pickup. So grab some friends and enjoy a few slices during the game.
That's right. The Ronk Pizza. One more pizza. I'll eat 3 slices right now. We've got Tucson Phil in the house. Phil McLaughlin, who proves every single night that Broncos country is not a geographic location. It's a state of being. Love you, big dog. He says, I'm not sold on any of these QBs available at 12 possibly. So I would take edge, O-line, or a D-line player. Hashtag Buckham, MHH for life, go Broncos. Yeah, Eric had a nice article yesterday as far as top bona fide round 1 options that were not QB options at pick 12 for offense. I think tomorrow there's one coming out, that same thing for defense. So if your guy's not there, in other words, that you were just absolutely in love with and couldn't make a deal to move up or whatever, do you want an edge rusher there, Zach? Do you want to trade back? Do you want to take a tackle? Do you want to what would you like to see the Broncos do if in this scenario Phil paints here? Either you're not sold or you're just not within reach of the right guy at 12.
First of all, do I look pixelated to you? I feel like that old cartoon Dilbert with the fuzzy edges, Chad.
Just a little blurry, like you need to do one of the paper things after you're done talking.
Just want to confirm I wasn't having a seizure. Phil, it depends how the board breaks. I hate to be so, vague with my answer, but I want to see if they pass on a quarterback who is there. My inclination would be to take an edge rusher. We've talked about it ad nauseum on the podcast. Behind quarterback, the most impactful player on a football field arguably is an edge rusher. And you can't get by with a set of number 2s anymore with the Coopers. And as much as I love them, Baron Browning and Nick Bonito, you need a true alpha, a true number 1. That's probably where I would go.
Every one of those edge guys for the Broncos that were playing the starter snaps this year, man, they are at best number 2 guys. Like, I shouldn't say at best. They are ideally the second guy. That's like, Baron Browning, number 2 guy. Jonathan Cooper, he finished with the team high in sacks. Was it 8.5 or 9? I can't recall. Actually, I got to check that out now. Nick Bonito, because Nick did end up getting one late. I gotta figure this out real quick, guys. Hold on 1 second. I got to see the team. Remind myself of the team leader in sacks. It'll take just a second because Jonathan Cooper was able to kind of bridge the gap toward the end. But then while Nick Bonito was hurt, though Nick Bonito returned. And okay, here we go. Sacks. It was Jonathan Cooper. Zach 8.5. Nick Bonito 8. Browning finished with 4.5 for what it's worth on basically a half a season.
It might be impressive to the Broncos, like him leading with that number, but like what did Khalil Mack have this year for the Chargers? Like 17 or 18, something like that. They need a Khalil Mack. They need someone that's in double digits consistently. And even when he's not getting a sack, he's taking attention away from the other players around him. They have no one on the team, Chad, that's capable of doing that.
Zach Allen, too, of course, had 5 sacks. So really it goes 1 Cooper, 2 Bonito, 3 Allen, 4 Browning. And then don't forget Josie Jewell with 3 along with PJ Locke for what it's worth. Ryan Main, what's going on, big dog? Welcome. Thank you very much for the super chat. I hope helps us out a lot, especially this time of year. Appreciate you, big dog. He says, does our number 12 overall, Patrick Surtain, and our second rounder in 25 get us the number 1 pick from the Bears? Zach?
No, they would not even pick up the phone. They'd laugh you off before hanging up because what did the Carolina-Chicago trade net? I think it was 2 first-rounders plus DJ Moore, who's like another first-rounder, and also a pair of second-rounders, if I'm not mistaken. So it's going to take at least 2 first-round picks, and probably a second and maybe Pat Surtain just to engage Chicago to move down 11 spots. This is not dropping down 1 or 2. This is 11, and you have to really blow them away to get them off that top pick.
Would you make that trade? If it came to it, would you give up two ones and Patrick Surtain if it got you your ideal guy? Which, I mean, it could be Caleb Williams, could be Drake May, could be Jaden Daniels. If it guaranteed it, would you do it?
Yeah, it would have to be a quarterback. And I guess if Sean Payton determines that is the guy, he's 1,000,000% sure he believes Williams or May has generational talent and could be a Super Bowl winning quarterback in Denver, I would get behind it. But none of these prospects, Chad, there's no Andrew Luck coming out. None of these guys are really generational to the point that I would mortgage the future for the 3rd season in a row on one of them.
Man, I'm not sure yet. I'm not sure what I would do quite yet, just because I'm still getting fully familiar with this QB class. But one thing to keep in mind here, guys, and as far as the full picture and context is, just like you guys, the initial impulse when I hear trade Patrick Surtain, my initial instinct is no, 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 no. However, the Broncos are rapidly approaching anyway cap hell. According to Over the Cap, they're $30 million above the cap as it stands for 2024. And Pat Surtain, guess what? In 12 months, he's going to be making $20 million a year, if and when, I should say, the Broncos exercise his 5th-year option. So, it's one of those positions you got to have, Zach, for a cornerstone championship caliber roster. But to me, it comes after quarterback. So get the quarterback. If it came at the cost of a trade that did include Patrick Surtain, I would not love it. I would lament it, but I would understand it. And I probably, I think the Broncos, if it came down to it and you're solving the biggest problem that has plagued this team outside of head coach post Super Bowl 50, might be a price they're willing to pay.
George Payton would be putting his job on the line. Sean Payton would be putting his reputation on the line. And I just don't see it, because Payton even talked about George, them being excited having a 1st rounder again, and hinting at the fact, I think you wrote it up, Chad, or Keith, maybe someone, that they're more inclined to trade back and stockpile draft picks as opposed to trading up. I just can't see it happening after 2 off seasons of trading away their 1st-round picks and blockbuster trades, and those trades not yielding much success. It'd be a tough sell for the fan base.
Indeed. Guys, real quick, before we jump back into the chat, it's been a minute since we did an update on the Super Chat rankings for the month of January. And here we are on the 15th day. So let's break it down. As you know, we take the top 10 finishers on Super Chat in a given month. Their names go in the digital hat, so to speak. We do a live raffle. Winner gets a Broncos jersey of their choice, and it's our way of trying to just give back and show our gratitude for the unbelievable support we get from our great community. So here's the rankings as it stands. Let me pop this card off the screen so it's a little easier to see. But we have a new number one, two new number ones. The Lady D, there have been times she's been around number one and maybe even held number one. But Deanna Hendry and James Moss, who's been both of them on fire this month, are at the top, tied number one. The Duchess, Michaela Parker, at 3. Sam Bam at 4. Gary Leach Palmer, the swashbuckler himself, at 5. Naj at 6. Mike Edel at 7. Montana Altitude, who came on strong of late, at 8. David Cromelo, D. Crom, at 9. Draft Time Broncos Country at 10. And then just a few of the names barely outside. Zeus McPeak, Patriot Tex, Mark Schrader, Xander, KB, Papa Kendall, etc. So there's your updated rankings for the month of January. Much love and respect. Lawrence jumping in. Big dog. What's going on? He said, I heard Nick mention Dak Prescott this morning, and I've kind of been thinking the same. Watch Jerry go and get Pete Carroll. Russ could go to Dallas while they send us Dak. What do you think, Zach?
I've seen the conversation on social media. Anyone who thinks that Russell Wilson right now is a better quarterback than Dak Prescott is delusional. That being said, though, with what money are they going to pay Dak Prescott with? You're getting out of the Russell Wilson era because you don't want to pay a quarterback that price tag. A quarterback that hasn't performed got you to the playoffs and won playoff games. As good as Dak is in the regular season with a loaded offense, I might add, how much playoff success have they had with Dak Prescott? Negligible. So it's fun to talk about. I would give it like a negative 0% chance of happening.
Yeah, it's very unlikely. I mean, how often, look, disappointing. Dak, his playoff body of work up to this point is wildly disappointing for the Cowboys, but he has been able to multiple times, Zach, get him to the dance, and collectively the team just comes up short. I think if you're looking for answers and you're Jerry Jones and you're trying to figure out what's going on here, I think you have to get past 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe more spots before you go quarterback, because you have a franchise guy, and those guys are not, they're not moved around. It's so unlikely to happen. But, and here's the caveat, it's the NFL. So crazy things sometimes happen, but that is certainly, Zach, not something I think at this stage anyway appears to be realistic in the least.
Oh, here's my thing. I like Dak Prescott a lot, and I think he would have some sort of success in Denver. I'm just so sick, Chad, of taking on another team's leftovers or trading for a veteran quarterback or a reclamation project. No more of that. Whether it's Dak Prescott, Kirk Cousins, I don't care. Anyone. Draft your own guy. Let Sean Payton handpick a rookie and build him up from day one in the mold of the vision for the offense. It's not asking a lot, Chad.
That's why I just think for fans, you have to buckle up and be prepared for extreme measures to be taken relative to maneuvering to be in position to get a guy, one of the guys, whether it's the Sean Payton guy. If you're in love with three of the guys and you're the Broncos and Sean Payton says, I could make some I could compose some beautiful music with any of these three guys, and it costs something quite extreme to get to three, and that's your floor. You get one, whatever. I think the Broncos, once they bite the bullet on Russ, you can't go back to the slim pickings, the leavings, the reclamation projects, hey, we're just one middle of the road quarterback away from winning in the AFC West. You can't fall prey to that any longer. Like, even if it does hurt for a year or two, you got to go get your guy. George Fox, I see us going for an O-line or D-line if there is no good quarterback at 12. Denver Broncos for life. MHH. Thank you, George. It very well could be, because D-line is another one, Zach, of the huge gaping holes. DJ Jones was wildly disappointing in year two. He is at the very tippity top of the list, as far as I'm concerned, of probable cap casualties this year. But relative to need and importance, if an edge guy's there, that's high ranked, I would focus more on edge than I would D-line, because both you need upgrades, at both spots.
I don't think they're going to take anyone for the sake of just taking them. If no quarterback is there and they wanted their quarterback, they might just move down a few spots to the lower teens or the upper 20s and get a third or a second and a third back in return and have more draft capital. But one more thing about the quarterback and Dak Prescott. If, let's say, the Broncos end up with Jaden Daniels somehow, they trade up to 10, for example, 8, whatever. Compare Jaden Daniels to Dak Prescott. Would you really think that Daniels would be a lot worse in the long term than Dak? I don't think so. I think Sean Payton can have the same amount of success. The difference is the price tag. You'd be getting a quarterback that you can grow with for the long term on a fraction of what you'd be paying Dak, which is probably $50 million a year, I'm assuming. That's why it's not worth it to throw money and capital at another veteran when you've went down that road before and have nothing to show for it. Draft your guy, whether it's round 1, round 3, round 7, I don't care.
Well said, big dog. The Duchess from the top rope. This is what she does. We love you. Appreciate you. She says, though, I'm so done with the Broncos. I'm tired of losing. I can't do it anymore. I saw next year's opponents, and I counted 4 wins. I'm out, frustrated, and drained. Michaela, let me tell you something. I don't think any of us in this room could blame you for feeling frustrated and drained. I think we all do, especially so closely on the heels, Zach, of another colossal disappointment season, and one that ended with a fair measure of tomfoolery relative to the Peyton Russ hijinks and whatnot. But next year's opponents, look, it's not actually that bad. This past season, think of all the stiff opposition the Broncos faced this year. They had the 12th toughest strength of schedule this past season. This coming year, we know the opponents. We don't know the order yet. We don't actually have the schedule. But this year, they have the 20th toughest strength of schedule. Basically the toughest part about it is you get the Chiefs twice and you have to play the AFC North. I mean, that's it. So you got to play Baltimore, you got to play Cincy, you got to play Cleveland, you got to play Pittsburgh. All four of which, depending on how chips fall between now and then, are poised anyway, Zach, to be either playoff opponent or playoff caliber type opponent. So, hey, the Broncos, otherwise, the schedule looks manageable to me. So that's beside the point. What I would like to convey to you, Michaela, is you know what? This whole thing came about what we do with the live streams and whatnot, and the amazing community and the bonds and friendships we've made that are like, I mean, lasting, lifelong bonds and friendships. Even if Zach and I, at the end of this show, were to say, guys, and by the way, this was our last podcast, we're done, goodbye. So many of the friendships and bonds we've made because of this community and this podcast will be lifelong. And so that's what I kind of, through the darkest times, hang my hat on, Zach, is the community aspect. You guys help keep us coming back. And all I can tell you, Michaela, is chin up. We're here for you. We're all here for each other. And if it does end up being another one of those type of campaigns, we'll get through it together and enjoy each other's company. Just like, hey, the meet and greets still undefeated, Zach. 3-0, the MHH meet and greets are the Broncos. So I don't even want to contemplate what this community would be like without the Duchess.
I'm never one to gatekeep any fan's interest. If Michaela, you feel that way, I totally get it. It's been a long 7, 8 years or so. But when you looked at last season's schedule, we did, as we always do, a schedule release show. The Bills were on there. Did anyone think the Broncos would win that game? The Chiefs were on there. Did anyone think the Broncos would finally get a win against them? You never really know until you know. Green Bay, Chicago, those were all tough games considered by some, and the Broncos managed to pull it out and go on a winning streak and almost make the playoffs. So it's the typical burnout, Michaela. It's been a long season, a lot of rumors. The Russ situation is looking like it's come to an end. It's been, again, a long road. But I know you, and I know in a few months or a few weeks that itch is going to return, and we will welcome you back with open arms, as we always do.
Now, listen, the Broncos last year, it rotates because you've got a 17-game schedule. It used to be you'd get an even 8 at home and even 8 away. This time around, the Broncos have one additional road game. Here's what Michaela, with another very generous super chat. Love you so much, Michaela. Here's what she predicts. So you've got KC away, of course. She predicts an L. Chargers away. She predicts an L. Raiders away. Predicts an L. Ravens loss. Bengals loss. Saints a loss. Bucks a loss. Jets a loss. Seahawks a loss. She's got 2 wins. Let's just put it this way. She's got Raiders. 1, 2, 3 wins. Raiders, Falcons, Raiders, Falcons. Wait a minute. I got lost here. KC lost. Chargers, Raiders, Falcons, Panthers as wins. So 4 wins. Hey, again, I understand how you're feeling right now. Trust me. But it's hard for me to get too far into the weeds on predicting the schedule or the opponents until we know kind of how some of these big offseason blocks fall into place.
Exactly. This is something that we'll break down in April, as the offseason schedule rolls on and when the Broncos 2024 docket officially comes out. I understand how you feel, Michaela, but at least, Chad, the Broncos will beat the Raiders this season, so we have that to look forward to.
Yes. But it is, I'm with you. I'm sick of it I'm sick of being at a point where you have to anticipate a loss against the Raiders. So there's plenty of room for improvement. But One last thing before we move off the subject of kind of um, apathy, right? Like general apathy from Broncos country is it wasn't all bad. Now, I'm not trying to we understand the Mr. B standard and all that, but pragmatically speaking, let's take a look at things. Sean Payton comes in, Zach, on the heels, inherits a team that finished 5 wins the year prior, one of the worst finished total seasons in franchise history, and improved upon it by 3 victories in the standings, right? Gets to 8 wins. Wasn't enough. You can go back and look at maybe as many as 4 of those games that if one different decision gets made, ball bounces a different way, etc. The Broncos are a 12-win team, 11-win team. They're in the dance. And I get it, if ifs and buts were candy and nuts, we all would have a happy new year and all that stuff. But they did move the needle forward. One of the weird emotions, Zach, I think I'm feeling right now, and I bet a lot of fans are as well, is there was some, as disappointing as it was to miss the playoffs once again, lose to get swept by the Raiders again, etc. I do want to focus on the positives. However, the way the season ended by blasting open the door of quarterback uncertainty only kind of further fueled the I don't want to call it a knee jerk, but the feeling of apathy. And it's hard to overcome that. The Broncos need to try and get that solved ASAP to start winning back some belief in the fan base.
100% well said. There's no real emotion in apathy, but the Broncos gave the fan base hope, and hope can crush you when it doesn't go ultimately in your favor. And the hope was the winning streak. The hope was the Broncos finally found their quarterback, or at least unlock their quarterback in Russell Wilson. They proved they can hang with the elites in the NFL, and that to come crashing down with the Houston loss, and then the Detroit stomping, and then that final death blow, the New England loss, where it's a game they should have won, they needed to win, and they came out and sunk up the joint. So that's what, speaking, I guess, from a fan's point of view, that's what would do it for me. They pull me back in, as the old quote goes,
Just when I thought I was out, come on, do the Silvio, who does the Al Pacino, of course.
I can't do it. I'm not going to embarrass myself.
They pull me back in. There is something I want to talk about that you just triggered a thought on Russ. But first, before we get to that, guys, we got to remind you that get started on your New Year's resolutions with Factor so that you're ready to take on a productive, successful new year. Factor's ready-to-eat meal delivery takes the stress out of meal planning and sets you up for success in this new year. You get to skip the grocery lines, the prep work, cooking fatigue, and instead you get chef-crafted, dietitian-approved meals delivered right to your door, and they look like a little kind of TV dinner looking thing, except unlike a TV dinner that comes out of a freezer, processed food, all that gross, no, this is fresh food, all right? And it's bomb. With over 35 meals to choose from per week, including options like keto, calorie smart. You got options for vegans and vegetarians and more, plus over 55 weekly add-ons you can include. You'll have a ton of nutritious and flavorful options to kickstart your New Year's resolutions.
Skip the stress of meal prepping with Factor. Choose from more than 35 weekly flavor-packed, fresh, never frozen meals that support a healthy lifestyle and meet your meal preferences, all delivered right to your door and ready to eat in just 2 minutes. This January, get Factor and enjoy eating well without the hassle. Simply choose your meals and enjoy fresh, flavor-packed meals delivered to your door, ready in just 2 minutes. No prep, no mess. Join Mile High Huddle on making Factor a way of life 365 days a year.
Bada bing. Head to factormeals.com/huddle50 and use our code huddle50 to get 50% off. Again, factormeals.com/huddle50. Plus, at checkout, use the code huddle50 and you get 50% off. All right. What I was going to say, the idea of, all right, we're disappointed, but there's also a little bit of optimism. You snap the streak against the Chiefs. I mean, it felt like that was a 800-pound gorilla that the Broncos, for whatever reason, was like, as long as Mahomes is here, we're just never getting that off our back. They snapped that finally. They dispensed with that. The bad juju is dissipating. There's a lot of positives. And even the Russ thing, like if you don't bench him, you don't make that decision. You go, okay, he probably finishes Zach if he started the final 2 games healthy as he was. Probably finishes somewhere around 30 touchdowns. We'll call it 10 interceptions, and probably somewhere around 3,400 yards, where he finished at right now, just over, or I should say, just under 3,100. All right, and you go, well, improvements, but that was year 1 with Sean Payton. I would anticipate, being that they're basically locked in with Russ, and that the actual new money on his deal and the new years of the term don't actually begin till 2024. I think there was enough evidence there to go, we can reasonably anticipate that he'll be even better in year 2 with Peyton, right? And with a full year in the scheme, a full year working with Peyton, Peyton having a full year working with Russ, all that stuff. And then once again, now you get the kind of the rug pulled out from under you as a fan going, I don't know which way is up on this thing, because I wanted to kind of try and find the silver linings amid the disappointment. But now it's like, well, I don't even know which way this thing is headed.
It's the uncertainty, because the Broncos have tried both routes. They've tried acquiring a veteran like a Joe Flacco or a Case Keenum, didn't work out. They tried drafting a quarterback, Paxton Lynch, Drew Lock, didn't work out. And now the Broncos find themselves having to choose the fork in the road. Do they draft? Do they sign a veteran, acquire one? And that's, from a fan, it's like the quarterback carousel. Do we have to get back on that again? When is it going to end? Boy, am I tired of hearing this cheesy music. It's just been 7-8 years of it, and I totally understand where people like Michaela are coming from.
You know what it sounds like to me, that carousel music? It sounds eerily similar to
Over
clown
and
show.
over and over for 8 years.
Clown show. I mean, Pennywise, or I should say Broncos, don't have nothing. Pennywise don't have nothing on Broncos. There I go. I ruined my own thing. But anyway, we'll see what happens on that. As far as Russ, I think, Zach, we're about a week away from the soonest we can anticipate beginning to get some answers there, or at least, the next first, I should say, I guess, the first move on Russ.
Yeah, he told, I think it was Diana Rossini a few weeks ago, that he expects to be released in March, before those injury guarantees become fully guaranteed. Hopefully we have some news, though, Chad, because this is a very dry period for Broncos offseason.
Indeed. It's like, it's just a weird energy. And that's why, Michaela, we totally can understand where you're coming from. But we hope you join us in trying to keep your chin up, and we'll get through it together. Trust on that. All right, we are at 38 minutes. Guys, we'll probably keep tonight pretty tight, just because there is a NFC playoff game going on, and you've got the Bucs currently up 10-0 on the Eagles, as with about 4.5 left in the first quarter. So Baker Mayfield off to a solid start. Zach, the Eagles can't really find their footing so far.
This has been the downfall of the Eagles. There's always that curse. Have you heard about that, Chev? The Super Bowl losers curse, the team that drops the big game, ends up kind of tanking the next season. Philly started off pretty strong, but I think that coordinator change, losing Shane Steichen and going to Brian Johnson, has really been a negative down. And also Matt Patricia, of all people, running the Philly defense. I just think it's a full-blown downfall.
That's funny, Scott. Hey, think back to Halloween. Everybody had the Cowboys and Eagles being bounced in the first round, right? You know what? Yeah, Super Bowl losers curse. We haven't heard of that in Georgia, talking about the Falcons. But, you think back to the Broncos losing Super Bowl 48 with Peyton. What happened in 2014? They had a very good 2014 season. I'm trying to remember if it was the 1 or the 2 seed. But that was the year, once again, it was the swan song of John Fox, because from the time Peyton arrived, you had in year 1, you win the 1 seed, get bounced in the divisional round immediately, one and done by the upstart Ravens, Joe Flacco and all that, Jacoby Jones. Then the next year you go to the big dance and you get trucked in the mouth by Russ and the Seahawks defense, the Legion of Boom. Then you come back to the table with John Fox, because why wouldn't you? You've had a lot of success so far with Peyton, and you make it to the divisional round with another bye, and you allow Andrew Luck and the Colts to come in and bounce you in the first round, the divisional round, or, one and done. That's when John Elway was like, yeah, we're going to go ahead and move on, because it just so happened that about a year ago, my best friend and the guy I ideally wanted for this job was fired by the Texans. He's been making a paycheck as the OC of the Ravens. Hey, Coob, come on back. So it isn't good. It wasn't good for the Broncos in the final analysis, Zach, 2014, but I don't think it's a perfect science, the idea of Super Bowl losing curse, because, to me, that would intimate you don't even make the playoffs. Like, you suck.
I just am following the smoke that could lead to a fire. There was that mystery report about a team that could be in it for Belichick in the NFC East. Could be Dallas, could be Philly. If they blow this game tonight, wild card weekend, to an underrated, I don't think they're favored, the Bucs. They might be underdogs. If they blow this game, they might make a big change with Nick Sirianni.
Okay, Lawrence Rivera, thank you for your patience, buddy. Why not Derrick Henry? He's looking for another team. He told Titan fans goodbye, and Dallas is a destination anyone would go to. Yeah, I mean, Dallas, sure. I mean, I'm not sure exactly what that's in reference to. The Russ thing? I mean, Russ could end up there. He's not getting traded there. He's not getting traded. No one wants that contract. Pete Carroll, he's old, dude. He's 72. But let's talk about this Derrick Henry thing, Zach. How do you feel about the prospect? Because we talked about this numerous times, especially the second half of the season. But, last night, for example, the Broncos could use a more explosive ball carrier, a back that has better vision. He's not exactly a pass catcher per se, but would you want to see Derrick Henry, the Broncos, go out and try and bring one of the 2,000-yard members of the 2,000-yard club to Denver?
No. I have one number for you in reference to Derrick Henry, and that's 30, which he just turned on January 4th. You don't pay aging running backs. You don't invest, as we've learned in recent seasons, in a one running back system. The Broncos running game wasn't good enough, though you have a mini Derrick Henry and Javonte when he's fully healthy. He'll be under contract. I would not go out and give an aging running back good money to come play for your team when you have other issues you should be first focused on.
If it was Zach, if it was like a Melvin Gordon caliber contract, I would actually do it if they're able to create cap space. I mean, they're going to have to find some way. It's going to be painful, by the way. So that's why what I'm saying, guys, buckle up for a tumultuous offseason. But if you could get even Derrick Henry on that type of a deal, we're talking about a guy that, yes, you got to pay attention to the fact that he did just turn 30. Excellent point. But also look at the way the wind's blowing relative to tread on the tires. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years in the NFL. He's rushed for 1,000 yards or more in 5 of the last 6 seasons. And that one season amid those 6 that he didn't, he rushed for 937, Zach, in 8 games. 937 in 8 games. He is an animal. This past season, as he was approaching the dreaded 30-year-old wall, Zach, 1,167 rush yards, a whopping 12 touchdowns, and his yards per carry average remains healthy at 4.2. So I would absolutely be open to it. Am I breaking the bank? No. Let's see what Michaela has to say, though. Shifting gears a little. Thank you. Super chat number 3. Love you so much, Michaela. Again, I don't know what we would do without you. That's for real. She says, instead of Walmart, we're the dollar store bargain bin team. And you're especially going to have to be that, Zach, in free agency this year because of the salary cap.
Yeah, thank you again, Michaela. And I just want to put a bow on my Derrick Henry thoughts. I've followed Tennessee this season because I had Tyjae Spears on my fantasy team, and I can tell you that there were reasons why the rumors were so persistent about Derrick Henry being a trade candidate before that deadline. They wanted to go in a different direction. You've mentioned one reason: he's not a great pass catcher, and he's more like a goal line vulture at this stage of his career. Is he still a good running back? Yes, but he's not going to be getting better as he gets older. He's going to be getting worse. And Ezekiel Elliott, I think, is a case example of how running backs deteriorate as good as they are. And I'm sure in the short term, he can help the Broncos, but they are not a Derrick Henry away from competing. They are multiple players away from competing.
Agreed. Guys, two more we're going to grab here, and then we're dipping out unless there's an 11th hour super that comes in. The Ronk with his customary great show message and show of support. Thank you, bro. There is also something Mike said earlier I wanted to grab. Sean Payton should have known what he was getting into relative to Russell Wilson. And I think he did, for what it's worth. Zach, I think based on the most current reporting, he did know what he was getting into, but he still signed up for it. So it's like, if you believe the latest reports that he did have misgivings about what Russ might have left in the tank and his relative fit with Sean, but resolved to give it the college try. He knew, I think, Zach, what he was getting into. I think maybe now it's like, hey, did he understand what the consequences would be if it didn't work? And that's where maybe he didn't know or what he was getting into. And if so, he should have.
Well, I don't know. You don't give a football coach $18 million a year and not also give him full autonomy and carte blanche over roster and personnel decisions. I think he was told by the Penners in the hiring process, we want to make it work with Russ, but you also have at your disposal, whenever you want to move on from Russ, we'll get behind you. And he exercised that option after 15 games. So he did know in the end what he was getting himself into. But this speaks pretty loud, Chad, most of the time, doesn't it?
It's like my dad, shout out Mark. He loves it. This is one of his the Markisms, that nothing rings the bell like money, and that's absolutely true. Phil, I want to see how to win. Watching playoffs, it's very clear. Get a run game. So that kind of does bridge back to the whole Derrick Henry idea. I would definitely have him on the radar as a possibility. I would see, relative to what other backs might be out there, both free agency and the draft and whatnot. But you do need an upgrade in explosive wherewithal and a back with some patience and vision. Because, Zach, even before the injury, watching Javonte Williams, that was at times, I mean, it's still frustrating, but his vision, his problems with vision, running into the back of blockers on the reg, I mean, that holds you back quite a lot.
Well, if the Broncos are going to allocate money to Derrick Henry, he's going to have to be satisfied running behind Alex Forsyth. This is what I'm talking about. You have Lloyd Cushenberry, your starting center, who had a great year, up for a contract. Even though it's not possible with the Broncos in cap hell, I would devote my resources to that guy or an edge rusher or a tight end or something other than a luxury position like running back. Though if King Henry was in Denver, I get a little excited. I'm not going to lie.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Member of the 2,000-yard club. Absolutely dope. Great point there, Phil. And one last twist of the Russ and Sean Payton knowing what he should have known what he was getting into comes from Mr. Producer. Hey, look, Sean Payton had assurance that if he gives it a shot with Russ and it doesn't work, you could move on from Russ. And he did. And I would argue, Zach, that he did it rather ham-fistedly. I think that in the final analysis, it served the Broncos literally in no way other than perhaps being petty and vindictive to bench Russ with those 2 games left.
Yeah, we're going to continue discussing the impetus behind the Russell Wilson benching, but I'll continue to say, Chad, on the Wilson front, the sooner this is resolved, the better, in my opinion.
That's right. And I think it would, last thing, and then we're going to get out of here, guys. I think it would give a modest lift back to Broncos country, a little bit of some wind beneath your wings. If you were to hear, hey, you know what, we've come to some kind of a reconciliation, Russ is coming back, and the Broncos go out and either use that first-round pick on a future guy to groom behind Russ or restock the shelves and try and make another push with Russ. I think that would help bring back some optimism, but it doesn't necessarily mean, Zach, it would be the right thing to do.
The fan base, like Michaela and many others, they just want answers. If the Broncos are going on with Russ, if they want to keep him, fine. If you want to move on, fine, but just make a decision and forge your path forward. What the fan base doesn't want is to continue to be caught in purgatory, not knowing which way, north, south, east, west, the Broncos are going to go. Pick a lane and drive forward.
That's right. That's right. Michael, got to bridge that gap. Broncos got to bridge the gap right now, baby. And by the way, a shout out here to Pearl in the house. Good to see Pearl Heater. Appreciate you. But guys, we're done with the conversation tonight. But before we dip out, we do have a couple messages for you. So don't leave quite yet.
Another tremendous installment of the Mile High Huddle podcast. If you're not doing so, please follow us on Twitter at the MHH Pod. You can follow the main account on Twitter at Mile High Huddle, Chad at Chad and Jensen, myself at Kelberman NFL, and Scott, our producer, at Scout Kennedy. If you guys want some merch like we're rocking each and every single podcast, each and every day, check out mhhmerch.com and get you some. If you haven't, please drop us a like at facebook.com/Mile High Huddle Pod. You can find us on IG at mile_high_huddle. And if you're on Apple Podcasts, make sure you're leaving your football priest a 5-star review for a chance to win some of that merch each and every single month. But please, ladies and gentlemen, subscribe, like, and share this video and every video you see on the MHH channel. It really helps us grow and reach more Broncos fans just like you.
That's right, baby. Much love and respect to every one of you within the sound of our voices right now. Appreciate you, seriously. Each and every one of you, numbered in our hearts. Zach and I, Scott, all of us here at MHH, we love you. Tonight, a special Mile High salute and shout out to the great Super Chat superstars and supporters that help us keep the lights on here with our podcast platform. And that includes the Duchess, Michaela Parker, the Ronk, Michael Ronquillo, Tucson Phil McLaughlin, Ryan Main, Lawrence Rivera, George Fox. Much love and respect. Thank you, guys. We'll see you in a couple of days, Zach and I. But Scott, you got some Broncos for breakfast with Nick on the Bright? No Broncos for breakfast Tuesday morning. But building the Broncos Tuesday night, Mile High Insiders Wednesday night, Broncos for breakfast Thursday. And then we're back Thursday night. Can't wait to see you guys.
Have a great start to your week, all. We'll see you Thursday night. Take care, and as always, go Broncos.